Welcome to this episode of HCA Talks Health. I'm Zena, your host, and today we have Ann Gadd as our guest. So Ann is the author of, is it 42 books in total, Ann?
It is, yes.
Okay, so you've
Published
covered
books, a couple that aren't published, yeah.
Okay, but you've definitely covered quite a wide range of topics, right, over the years. But you're also a certified Enneagram practitioner and an accomplished artist. So it really is a privilege to have you as our guest today, Anne. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
So Anne, you recently wrote the book, The Enneagram of Eating. So can you maybe start out by just telling us a little bit more about what the Enneagram is for those people out there who don't know what it is?
Okay, so let's start with the name. Ennea, 9, gram as in logo. So logo of 9, picture of 9, all right? Because there are 9 basic points on the edges of the Enneagram. Mm-hmm. So what the Enneagram is it describes 9 basic types of behavior, of which there are further subtleties making for more and more different variations. But at its basic core, 9 different types of behavior. And then as to its origins, the actual symbol's been around since Socrates' time, Plato, the early times, but it only became associated with the personalities in the last century. A guy called Gurdjieff, who was a great philosopher, artist, he had many talents. He coined the name, and then it was a South American guy, Chazo, who started attributing very basic aspects of personality to the different points. And then one of his pupils, Claudio Naranjo, who was a psychiatrist, started recognizing classical behavioral types that match those 4 points. Oh. I mean, so that's really where it evolved from. And from there, it's been taken up by any number of other psychologists, psychiatrists, practitioners of various sorts who've added through research to this body of knowledge.
Okay, so it's mostly used in psychological setups, would you say?
The Enneagram really is not like other profiling personality systems, because it doesn't just define, like Myers-Briggs, it doesn't just say you're an INTJ or whatever and leave you there. It's saying, actually, this is how your personality developed. And this is how you can move beyond an ego-based personality.
Okay, so it's not a set type.
No, your type remains, but your health within that type varies. So there are different levels of health, which they've identified 9 different levels of health. So a type at the lowest level of health is going to look very different to a fully integrated, conscious version of that type.
Okay. So it's quite interesting, and I read your book, and you obviously applied the Enneagram to our eating styles as well.
Yes.
Right. So how do we take this into account, or why do we need to take these different types into account when it comes to our eating?
As an avid dieter, my shelf was filled with various different diets written by different people. And, one day I was just about to chuck the lot away. And I came to a sudden realization that each writer had written from their perspective. So in Enneagram terms, from their type. And that whilst that particular advice or diet or whatever may be very beneficial to that particular type, it wouldn't be beneficial to all types. Mm. So, and I realized that nobody was taking into account our different personalities. So both from why we put on weight and both how we could potentially lose it and the exercises we might be interested or drawn to and so on, and why this was. So it was a one size fits all. And what I was aiming at through the book was to show that, hold on here, different personalities are going to respond and behave very differently. Yeah. And so that the book is not and doesn't, and someone got very angry with me on Amazon because they said, but it doesn't give any diets or anything. No, I'm not a dietitian. So that's not me. But what I'm trying to show is the chicken and the egg. And I'm saying, okay, well, maybe let's look at the chicken, why we put on weight. So that'll help us to lose it, or to be healthier, or to understand why we have procrastination and why we have motivation problems, all those things that happen.
Okay,
Even
so
why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, so that's quite interesting, where it feels like it's always from when an author is writing a diet book, then it's often from their perspective. It's from they're writing it because of their certain type and how they relate to food and the types of behaviors that they have around food. And then they feel like, this is the answer to everyone out there. If you just do this, everyone, it's a miracle cure, right? But then someone at the opposite side of the Enneagram feels like, no, this is definitely not going to be helpful for me, right?
Correct. And that you haven't really understood me. So yes, there is a type which will comfort eat, without a doubt. But not everyone puts on weight because of comfort eating. No. And I think that's where many of the authors have gone, not so wrong, but have limited the potential of their books.
So I think for our audience to truly understand what we're talking about when we're referring to types, I think it might be helpful to just quickly go through the 9 types. If you can give us a quick summary of what the 9 types eating personalities are like. Could you quickly share that with us?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about the word quickly, but I'll do my best. Grab your tea or coffee, Let's get into this. Okay. All right, so each type basically starts off with some neurosis, some basic fear that they then attempt to spend the rest of their life fixating about, and this is not consciously, and attempting to heal, but very often, because they don't understand it, it becomes a uniform way of thinking or pattern that is not particularly helpful. So what we do is we try and identify those patterns so that we can heal ourselves from them. So let's start off with type 1. Type 1 falls into the body triad, and that falls into also the anger triad. So ones attempt to withhold their anger. Okay, keep it in. So it often slips out in little snippy comments. But the big issue with ones is that they seek perfection. They want everything to be perfect, themselves included. And life is seldom perfect. So if for it not to be perfect, it has to be either it is or it isn't. So it starts off with a sort of black and white way of thinking. It's right or it's wrong. Okay, there's no gray area in between. And so ones are often known when they're not that, and when I talk about health, I'm talking emotional health here. When they're not that healthy, to be pretty critical or judgmental because that person isn't doing it the right way. Okay, maybe I'm also not doing it the right way. They're the kind of people who will have this whole dinner party story, and then afterwards everyone will say, wow, the food was amazing, and the one will be saying, well, the carrots were overcooked. So they're seeing the faulting thing. So ones normally don't tend to put on weight because they're very disciplined. Okay, so they love disciplined approaches, and measured because they're accurate. So it must be 150 grams of this with 200 grams of that, and oh boy, if you can throw in a cleansing thing in routine in there, all the better. All right, so that's the ones. But the trouble is, all this being perfect and good sort of builds up inside less healthy ones. And so what comes out of the other side is the need to rebel. So it's the one who goes the whole week and eats green and has green smoothies and does all the right stuff, and then binges out on a Friday night on, extra large wacky backy burger with all the stuff in it and does all the stuff. And then it sets in that sort of recrimination. Oh my God, I'm a terrible person because I did this. That's, and then going back into a routine of really trying to almost punish themselves for their weakness, for their, So that's the approach that ones tend to have towards eating.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So it's really all about it's almost an all or nothing approach. If I take one bite of chocolate, then I might as well give up and eat the whole bar and screw the diet. I'll start again on Monday with a more rigid way of eating.
Yes.
Right. So it's really about the rigidity and that need to be perfect, it seems.
Correct. Absolutely. And yeah, we've got it. So with ones, as a coach, what you're doing is saying to them, you know what, the world won't come to an end because you had that one piece of chocolate. So moderation. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So almost like a 80-20% principle could be a good approach precisely. For them. To do the good thing most of the time, or the healthy thing most of the time, but also incorporating some balance and space and balance, right? Yeah.
Yes. And as a coach, not letting them shift away from focusing on themselves by finding criticism with your approach. Bring it back to them. Okay, so yes, now tell me about this, Yeah. Okay, so now let's move on to number 2. So 2s sit in the feeling triad. There are 3 triads. So there's the feeling triad, the thinking triad, and the body triad. So they're part of the feeling triad. So 2s can often gush. They're always helping everyone else. They are very nurturing. They're very caring. They find out or remember what it was that you liked about the meal that you had the last time you came to their house, and they'll remember that and give, they're the people with sweets on their desk so that everyone can come and, they're very social. They don't like being on their own. They like to be in a relationship. So as children, they learned that you have to do in order to get love. I'm not worthy of love just for who I am. It's the opposite of Ayn Rand's book, The Virtue of Selfishness. It's the opposite of that. It's like the more I do for others, the more they will love me. So there's this giving to get thing that starts up. So I'll do all these nice things for them, but secretly I'm wanting them to do nice things for me. And if they don't, then I get quite resentful. Yeah. Okay, and then in their food approach, food becomes associated with warm, fuzzy, cuddly feelings. So the sweetness of life. So I've just been dumped by this person. I'm going to sit in the corner and binge watch TV and eat a whole box of donuts or something, because it makes me feel better about myself. Yeah. So there's a potential there for weight gain. So 2s will often get involved in sport if they think that they're doing it to help someone else. So yeah, I go with her to the gym because she wouldn't go if I didn't go with her, kind of thing. All right.
Yeah.
So it's about them finding a worthiness within themselves that I actually deserve to keep my body fit and healthy. And that no amount of donuts is going to give me the love that I'm looking for. I have to find that love within myself. I have to find myself worthy of love.
Absolutely. Yeah. So food tends to substitute that craving for intimacy, right?
Yes, correct.
And it's the eating kind of feeds the heart in many circumstances. So yeah, very important for them to figure out that they are important, but also I guess if they realize that in some way they could support someone else throughout their own journey, their health journey, it could be a motivation to start making better choices around health, if they know that they are supporting someone else as well? Or is that not necessarily a good motivation?
It could be better if they did it for themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
So if they turned that around, you could still go with someone and what have you, but not with the sole thing, well, I'm doing it to help them.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm doing it to help myself. And isn't it great that they're coming with me?
So it's a mindset shift for them that they need to take. I am important enough to take care of my own health.
I'm lovable enough.
Yes. Okay. All right.
So from a therapeutic approach, what they may often try to do is become best mates with their coach. So how are your children? And make it all about the coach and carefully deflecting it away from themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so it can be a trap a coach can fall into, because it's nice to have somebody asking about you, because all day asking about other people.
Yes.
Now here somebody's remembered that you mentioned that you like this type of herbal tea, and now they're bringing it to you. Isn't that grand? So it's a boundary issue, because twos do battle with boundaries. So it's establishing those boundaries, and our three, also one of the feeling types, but strangely enough, doesn't demonstrate it. So it keeps those feelings removed from others. They don't want to be shown, So three once said to me, people can say what they like to me in the office, but I don't show any emotion. I wait till I'm in the car alone or at home or something, and then I'll cry. Might be 3 days later, but I'll never do it in front of people. So threes would believe that somehow they have to be the best. They're the achievers, that somehow they aren't enough. So they have to create this facade of success. And it's all about being the star. So a lot of musicians, sort of actors and stuff tend to be threes, because the limelight is very attractive, because it's an affirmation of my success. Yeah. So threes always like goal setting, always wanting to get out there, to compete, to achieve. They're very good organizers. They adapt themselves easily to any situation, but they tend to like the trinkets of life. So they need the Apple iPad and the watch and all that stuff, because it's a measurement. It's a measure of success. Okay. Food-wise, they tend to be so busy working that if they're not particularly healthy, they may end up just eating junk and fast foods and eating on the run. When they do start becoming healthier, then they can focus more on themselves, but they can also use their bodies as a secret, as a demonstration of their success. In which case, you're going to get a lot of corrective surgeries, stuff like that. Massive amount of Botoxes, all that. Because they want to be not perfect like the ones, but seen to be amazing.
Yeah. So may they even harm themselves with excessive diets and working out to the point of injury, perhaps, something like that?
Yes. And also, their goal in life is to achieve authenticity. So what's the opposite of that? Is inauthenticity. So you may not always be that truthful. So think about sports people who take drugs to achieve success. Think about Lance Armstrong. He was a perfect example. Doing anything to succeed, even if it's not above board. Okay, because without that external success, inside, threes often feel very hollow. So I need to be that idealized version of myself.
Okay. All right. So a healthy option for them, or what needs? How can a coach
to
work
reach
with
that
them?
stage of authenticity? Okay. To start working with the inner selves and let go of the need always to project this wonderful success and to face failure. It's a huge thing for threes to say, you know what? I messed up, and I messed up really bad, and for that I apologize. but you know what? I learned a lot from it, and I'm not going to make the same mistake. That kind of thing. So accepting, being authentic, and then they can become great ambassadors for often NGOs and health organizations and stuff, because they've got business acumen and they've got marketing skills naturally. But now, instead of focusing on themselves, they're using that for a broader spectrum to help the world, in other words. And you find many threes in those kind of roles, positions. In terms of working with them, they may attempt to arm and disarm. What's a charm and disarm? So one has to keep bringing them back to you and what your goal is, and that, and working with them from that.
And I guess they would try their best to move away from their own vulnerabilities, because they don't want to necessarily accept failure, right?
Yes.
So they might put on that facade, right? Yeah.
As 1-3 said to me, when I'm feeling really good about myself, I go to the really good gym where all the cool people hang out. But when I'm not feeling that good about myself, I slink off down to the tiny little gym around the corner with bad equipment, because no one sees me there.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yes. All right. Interesting. Okay. And then type 4.
Type 4 feels that intrinsically they are wounded, and they feel that they're trying to find this other soul connection. So they're looking for depth, but they're unsure about who they are. So there's often a deep sense of shame with 4s, and they tend to sort of see themselves as suffering more than anyone else. Like they were maybe born to the wrong parents. They wish they'd been born a bit further down to those more cooler people. So with 4s, it's very much about, because they're one of the feeling types, but it's very much about expressing those feelings. They don't do shallow people. They want depth. They want to be unique, anything but boring. So they attempt to shine, right? So they could be use their bodies as a canvas, loads of tattoos and look really cool, that kind of thing. That often happens with 4s. They could use food, so they could maybe overeat when they're unhappy and then really not be interested in food. Food could reflect their moods. They can try out different ways of being. So if you see someone with a pink streak through their hair, the chances are you're looking at a 4. What is it like to be that? How does it feel like to be a goth, or to be a pirate in looks, or So they're always trying to explore themselves, to find the true inner self.
And they want to feel unique and alternative.
And they want to be special. So they, even if they can't afford it, they'll be buying this amazing coffee from some outlandish place that no one's ever heard of, because, well, I just need that, even if I have to eat lentils for the rest of the week, it's like, I'm special, I need this thing. So that's our 4s.
All right. And then
5s. 5s are intensely cerebral. Knowledge is power. The more I know, the safer I'll be, because remembering they are of the fear types. So if you want to research, observation, that's your 5. But they tend to distance themselves from intimacy with others, because they're afraid that there isn't really going to be enough to go around, and other people might drain their resources and their time and their energy. So 5s can often prefer to be on their own, rather than have the fear that everything I own is going to be taken from me through this relationship. So if they go to see and sorry, as a child, they had this feeling that my needs aren't going to be met. So if I minimize my needs, then that will help me, because there won't be so much to need. So they very often can become almost hermit-like, or what they do food-wise is they're very happy to eat the same food every single day, and it doesn't worry them. And because they're so in their heads, there's often a disconnect from the body. So they might skip meals completely, or pull that dirty old piece of pizza that's now 5 days old, that's been sitting around, and just eat that, because they're working on this project and it's really immaterial. It's food's not that important, it's just something to get me enough energy I can carry on with the research or project or whatever it is I'm working on.
Yeah. So the body is almost just a vehicle for my brain. So it's like it doesn't, yeah.
So healthy fives have created that connection between body and they do exercise, and they do, but it could be exercise like riding a motorcycle. The exercise could be a little quirky because they're quite eccentric fives often. So they probably wouldn't like team sports. They would probably prefer to do something on their own. So maybe hiking in nature, that kind of thing. Where they could be on their own, maybe bird watching, favorite thing for fives, love that. So because they can be on their own, if they can converse with other tutors about the birds they've seen, so they have that connection, but it's about who knows more. Yeah.
But I guess it could be quite beneficial if they realize, or if they've done the research to see that how healthy eating could influence their capacity to think, or their knowledge, right, or their productivity. Not so much.
Yes, but it's the research more goes into, I remember one five who came up with the idea that eating fish heads was the healthiest thing you could do. Forget about the body, and eat the eyes and all that stuff. So they can, the research can, I'm not saying always, but it can become kind of weird in what they choose to eat, and obsessive. I mean, my husband's a five, and he will every evening he'll have 2 rice cakes, 3 tomatoes, and half a tin of tuna with the oil in the tuna, which is completely revolting. And he's happy to do that. Now it's not unhealthy, but I'm sure I just can't. I don't get the fact that you don't get bored with that.
Yes.
And if they go to see someone, which is highly unlikely, the chances are they will throw back at the coach a whole array of research they've done, proving that the very thing you're trying to get them to do is wrong.
Okay. So it's just impossible to work
but
with
all
them.
These behaviors are ways of avoiding doing the real work,
Yeah.
In all the types. We all do.
Yeah, of course. All right, interesting. So that's the type 5. So type 6, let's move on to type 6.
So 6s are also your fear types. So they are often called the loyalist. So 6s as friends are incredibly loyal. They tend to be like the backbone of society. They are, at some point they had, normally around about the age of 2, they had this feeling that the world could not be trusted. That feeling when your parents says, it's safe, you can jump, I'll catch you. Okay, well, 6s have this feeling that I'll be dropped. So they're constantly on the lookout for what could potentially go wrong. Scanning the horizon, where is the next danger coming from? So 6s tend to like eating at sort of restaurants they've been to before and ordering the same dish because it's safe. It's not threatening. They're great team workers, but you have to work with them in the team. They don't do slackers. Yeah. So they can be very funny and self-depreciating in their humor, and they can be very engaging, but they can also be quite fickle if they're not healthy. Or a lot of these behaviors I'm describing for each type is the less healthy way those types can be. Yeah. And as most of us hang around in the average levels of being, it's probably why I'm focusing there rather than on,
Yeah, makes sense.
But paranoia panic attacks can be a problem for 6s. Attempting to stuff away that fear that they have. So you can find 6s are very security orientated. because they're worried about whatever danger could come their way. So from an eating point of view, if you were to be working with a 6, you would need to just tell them the dangers of health-wise of continuing to eat the way they are, because that will wake them up to the reality of, hey, I don't want to get sick. I don't want to do that. So now what can I do? Oh, well, maybe I should do this, because maybe it'll prevent the illness that I'm fearing.
So their health could almost be their insurance policy in that regard.
Correct. Yeah, because 6s love insurance. I mean, insurance was made for them, So yeah.
I love it. And yeah, so I think if they often if fear features a lot for them, then I guess there's a lot of stress eating as well that shows up for them. Not so much.
It can be, and it can be a lot of addictive behavior, because it's an attempt to squash that fear down. If I have another glass of wine, then I'm not going to be quite as anxious. And they also, 6s have an incredible inner knowing. They often just know stuff before it happens, but they can fear acting on that knowing. So then they become phone a friend, the competition where you phone a friend, what phone a friend was invented for. So I know that I should be doing this, but I'm not sure about it, not confident within myself enough to make that call. Let me just phone so-and-so and see what they think. So if you are a friend or a coach of a 6, the way to do it is to turn it back onto them and say, yeah, that's an interesting concept, but, tell me what you would do. Yeah. And they know the answer. Yeah. They just sometimes don't have the confidence to implement that.
Yeah, so it's really
that's what you would do.
Yeah, so really about helping them to trust that inner knowing again,
Absolutely.
and not
learning to trust themselves. And in doing so, if you trust yourself, then you start building up trust for the world.
Okay, fantastic. All right, and then type 7.
Oh yeah, 7's always fun to describe, because 7s are upbeat, fun. Don't try and impose on their freedom, because it's not going to work for them. Okay, so they are constantly trying to escape their fear and their pain by seeking new experiences. So as a child, what happened is they were often found themselves left. Maybe mum had to work a lot or had to go away or whatever. And at the age, that tiny age of 2 and so on, we tend to take everything on board as like we are responsible. It's our fault somehow. So rather than deal with the fact that maybe my mum had to leave me for whatever reason, they attempt to create their own little fun world. Okay, then they don't have to deal with that. So they're often called the epicures of the world, because 7s will drive 100 miles to go to this little place because they just have the most amazing artisanal cheeses. You just got to go there. And then while we're there, well, there's this place in town that does these artisanal chocolates that are just to die for, So they're always looking and planning for the new hype, the new thing that's exciting, because that's what keeps them going. So they're always planning for this. And they're the ones who say, okay, we'll go to that party, but then maybe on the way, let's stop off here and go there and then and there. And if that's not exciting enough, we'll move to that one.
Yeah.
So they can be the life and soul of the party, but not always, when they're in that sort of uppy space. So in terms of the approach to food, it's anything new, anything exciting, that new restaurant in town, that exciting new dish. Have you tried this? It's finding out about the background of how that particular cheese is made, or where that particular beef comes from and stuff. They like that stuff. So, a lot of chefs can be 7s. It also suits a lifestyle. And in as a coach, you often could have the issue that 7s want to make it all about fun, and they perceive you as taking away their fun and their freedom. So they're
Good
going to
idea.
resist. There's going to be pushback there.
Absolutely.
So you've got to find a way to say, actually, if you're healthy, if you lose weight, you're going to have more freedom because you're going to be able to do things that you currently can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to sell it to them in that way that makes it exciting, makes it fun.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you need to once again make that shift, because I can imagine how they would really hate limits to be imposed on them, right? In any
Absolutely.
way.
And dieting is limiting. So it's the
Yeah.
worst thing you could do to them.
Yeah. And they want that instant gratification in that moment,
Yes.
right? It's going to be fun. Now I don't care about the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. So we need to really share with them the benefits of being healthy and how much more they will be able to do if they are enjoying good health
Yes.
in
Yeah.
future. Yeah. Okay. And then type 8.
Type 8s are your, how can I say, they're charismatic people. An 8 walks into a room, you're not going to miss them being in the room.
Mm.
They tend to be powerful. They sass out the room. Who's the opposition here? Who's going to threaten me here? So 8s often grew up with this feeling that they had to grow up too soon. They often sort of missed out on childhood by having to take care of the younger siblings or protect a mother or whatever. So it's all about not allowing my vulnerability to show. It's all about the law of the jungle, kill or be killed, the fittest survive, that kind of feeling. What's that song? I did it my way,
Mm-hmm.
So in one sense, they're the rebels. They can be tremendously courageous. They are not frightened of a good fight. In fact, they quite enjoy it. So it's, will you stand in the fire with me? Because if you don't, and you don't speak straight, I'm not going to have respect for you.
Yeah.
So with 8s, one always learns to just say it like it is. When it comes to food and eating, they are very generous, warm-hearted people. So they're wanting big and hearty. Don't give them nouvelle cuisine with little bits of things all over the place. No, they want the steak. They want the big thing, the big chips, all those things. Because there's a lustiness about the way they approach eating. I want it, and I want it now. And I don't care if you haven't got it on the menu today. That's what I came to this restaurant for.
Oh, wow.
And there's also that wanting to sit, like the Italians, you always see in the movies, that the big Italian man sitting at the head of the table and the family all around. Yeah. Well, that's what it's like for 8s, whether they're male or female. As long as they're calling the shots and everyone's around them, they're very protective of those that they care for. Often overprotective in a way.
Yeah.
But so when you're working with an 8, there is a potential that they will dominate you completely, and they'll start telling you what you should be eating, and so
yeah,
you have to go into that fire with them. You have to give it straight back to them. Actually, you're going to waste my time. You came here, you clearly need something from me, and if you're not interested, then I'm not interested either. You've to be absolutely straight with them, and then they will respect you and listen to what you have to say.
Yeah.
And by the way, bring in that vulnerability, because if you get to be in a wheelchair, for instance, because you're not listening to what I'm saying, how incredibly vulnerable are you going to feel being dependent on other people? That's not going to work for them, and they can instantly get it and change as a result.
So it's almost just about finding each type's Achilles heel, right? In terms of what is the thing that will just motivate them to take action and to implement the changes into their lives.
Yeah,
right?
I'm trying to help coaches here to be better coaches and to understand there's not one approach for all the people who come through your door.
No.
And I have experienced coaches who really don't get that. And I mean, and it obviously hasn't worked as a result, because they're not speaking my language.
Yeah. And there's the danger of thinking that everyone sees the world through your lens, because you're seeing the lens through your type on the Enneagram.
Yes.
So you might think that this is exactly what's going to help the person sitting in front of me, and that's just not the case. You might be doing the exact opposite of what the person
Correct.
in front of you might need. Okay, so
Yes.
let's just finish off with type 9.
Nine.
And then
Okay, so 9s we go back to, and 8s were one of the body types. So they're very in their bodies. They're solid. You can feel them when they walk into a room. So 9s are your peacemakers of the Enneagram. 8s were the boss. So 9s have anger issues because they don't want to upset the peace by being angry. So they tend to stuff down that anger with food. And they tend to give up on themselves. So it's all about everyone else. It's all about merging with everyone else. It's all about everyone else's needs. So very often they don't have a great sense of self-esteem, and therefore why would they bother with themselves? It's almost like if they're not particularly healthy, given up on themselves. Some 9s do keep very fit because 9s like to feel they belong. They like to have that sense of belonging. So if they are doing something like yoga with a group of women or men that they meet every week, that sense of belonging will be what drives them to yoga more than anything else. And then obviously they can become quite fit as a result, So 9s tend to do the easiest option when it comes to food, which is not always the healthiest option. And they're known, the word often used with 9s is lazy, but it's not really always lazy as we know it. It's more, as I say, laziness for oneself, to really put the effort into making the changes. But often when they do, those changes are quick and sudden. So it often takes them a very long time to get there. But when they do, people are amazed because suddenly they've changed completely, So working with 9s, they like speaking a lot. So it's about letting them do that, but not letting them divert away from the issue with long stories. So keeping them, that's so interesting. But now tell me how this went for you this last week.
Come back.
Yeah, because otherwise you'll have a whole session and they'll walk away feeling very happy. Meanwhile, you haven't actually discussed anything you should have discussed.
Yes. Okay, so they're trying to distract.
Not intentionally. It's a subconscious thing.
Yeah.
But it's like a procrastination thing. It's and also with this repressed anger, there's often stubbornness.
Yeah.
Don't you bloody well tell me what to do. They won't say it to you. They'll never say it to you. But actually, you think I'm going to do this? Dream on.
Yeah.
So, there's 9s is often very independent, but it's that very independence that doesn't get them to always want to do what everyone's telling them to do. So they rebel in covert ways.
But it's quite interesting because they're independent, but still they want peace. Right, yes. So I can imagine that they would typically be the person who can't say no if someone offers them cupcakes because they feel like the person is going to feel, hurt if you don't eat their cupcakes, but they don't necessarily want the cupcakes, right? Or how would they react then?
And there would be like when you go to a restaurant with a 9, they'll be thinking, okay, what's everyone else ordering? Because I don't want to be the one to order the thing that's maybe more expensive than anything else, or that's, so they would have a problem making that decision. They're waiting for somebody else to take the lead, and then they'll say, oh, well, I'll have that as well, Then I'll be safe. Then there won't be a conflict.
Okay, interesting. All right, so those are the 9 types. Very interesting, and as you mentioned, it's very important to be aware of this when coaching clients, but also just in relationships. I guess this could be really useful to know what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the different types and how to work best with your husband and your kids and your family. I guess it could also be really helpful. So something that I'm curious about is, do you think that we are born as a type, or is it more that our environment or trauma or how we nurtured in life kind of sets up our type as well? What are your thoughts around that?
Not everyone in the Enneagram world agrees on this, but my experience is that we are born a type, but our level of health in that type varies according to our background.
Okay.
So that can really affect us. But we will still be that type. I mean, I've seen it in animals, because it doesn't just affect humans. I mean, I've seen it with animals. You know, I mean, my one cat is an 8. I mean, it's just, he just rules the place. Absolutely.
Really?
You know.
Wow.
And the other cat is, you know, a little pleasing 9. Can I help? You know. So, you know, the animals show this to us. So we are, I believe, born a type. And I think that's why parents say, I don't understand it. We brought them all up in the same way, the same house or what have you, but why are our children so different? Because they're different types.
Okay, wow. And so do you feel like we're not really limited by our type in that sense? I mean, to a certain degree we are then limited to our type, but there is some movement in terms of how healthy I am within my type. Or can someone actually move to another type completely, or is that not possible throughout
No,
life?
you can't move to another type, but what can happen is as you start understanding and observing the fixations of your particular type and questioning, do I really want to start behaving like that? So maybe if you're one of the types who, let's say, tend to make a drama of everything, you can now stand back and say, okay, I understand why I'm doing that. Do I want to do it? How is it benefiting me? Actually, it's not benefiting me. You know what? I'm not going to do it. So now I've started to grow as a person. And the closer you get to that stage of health in your type, the more you embrace the behaviors of the other types. It's like a rainbow, you know, it all starts from a white light and then it goes off into these different colors. But essentially we are all types. But we will live this life through the distortion, if you like, of one type.
Yeah, so there's a quote in your book that I love, and I think this is such a great summary of what you've just said, is that the more integrated we become, the greater access we have to all the aspects of all the types. And then all types then essentially meet as one. Right, so that's exactly
it's
what you said.
With someone who's really a mature, integrated person, it's often quite hard to tell what type they are because of that. It's much easier to tell someone's type the less integrated they are. Because they're displaying the more distorted aspects of themselves.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. So when there's health in the system, that's where firstly we need that awareness. Right, so firstly we need to have that awareness. Okay, these are typical characteristics. This is the way in which I behave. And then we can start building in that pause to decide whether we are going to react in our habitual ways or maybe incorporate some change. But is it that easy to make that choice?
Darling, this is not easy. It's very
imagine.
easy to jump up behind your husband or whatever and say, oh, you're just behaving like fine. Very easy. But when it comes to ourselves, I mean, even if we look at something like forgiveness, blame is so much nicer. It's so much more comforting. But to actually really at the depth level to be able to forgive somebody it's not easy. It's not for sissies. And so none of this work that we do through the Enneagram is necessarily easy because it gets us to face aspects of our behavior that aren't always particularly pleasant.
Yeah.
And then we can release them. But if we don't acknowledge them, we can't release them. Yeah. So who wants to be seen as selfish or smothering or controlling or manipulative, all those things? None of us want to. So in admitting that resides within us, it's hard. It's hard. So that is why in the sort of pop psychology world of the Enneagram, so many people get stuck on, oh, I'm a 7, I'm upbeat, I'm fun, isn't that grand? Well, no, you've rather missed the point.
Yeah.
The point is to look at those aspects of sevens that aren't particularly pleasant that you have within yourself and really sit down and question those within yourself and be aware of them so that you don't have to carry on those fixations. It's a form of madness in a way, because we carry on allowing ourselves to behave in certain ways because the ego believes that that's the best, most protective way we can be, when in fact it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always a reason why we act the ways that we do, right? In the ways that we do. Often a protective mechanism, as you say. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you know, we've been thinking about and talking about, you've been sharing with us tips on becoming a healthy type 9 or a type 8 or whatever. So when you talk about becoming a healthy type on the or type 9, let's say, is this about getting in better shape, or is it more about an all-encompassing type of more holistic, integrative type of health or emotional health that you refer to?
Okay, the Enneagram works with 3 centers. Okay, we mentioned them briefly earlier: the head, the heart, and the body. Yeah. And it advocates that unless those 3 centers are working together, we cannot be healthy. So there comes distortions. Mm-hmm. So each type has a different area. That's, for instance, we go to the 5, so they are head types. It doesn't mean that that's grand. It means that that is where the distortion is coming in, because the head is allowing them to disconnect from the other 2 aspects, the emotional aspect and the physical aspect. So in order to heal as a 5, they have to engage physically and emotionally, and then they are healed. One can't exist without the other. You can't be, in my belief, physically wonderfully healthy and emotionally toxic. It's going to, there's got to be that connection.
So would that be your definition of healthy, to bring those 3 centers together?
Yes, to work together. Yeah. So that there's an awareness in all 3 of those centers, as opposed to distortions and disconnects.
Yes, and obsessions, basically.
Yes.
When we get obsessed with one area of our health, and then it's absolutely not healthy in the bigger scheme of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, they've got to work together. And something that Enneagram, it's another whole subject in itself that we haven't really dealt with, but there are also the instinctual variants. Mm-hmm. So the self-preservation aspect of ourselves, and the social aspect, and the sexual or one-on-one aspect. So those, we're not aware of them consciously, but as we know, our subconscious is incredibly powerful. Mm-hmm. And those are also huge motivations. I mean, I wrote a book on artists, Paint by Numbers, and that looks at how those 3 centers determine the type of artist you will become and how you will approach art. Oh, wow. So, the 3 is going, the self-preservation is going to be the business artist, so it's all about, okay, let's make this artwork. What do we do in social media? How do we make this happen? Blah, blah. For the social artist, it's more going to be about how do I get that fame that I'm after? How do I get that position, the prestige, the likes, the follows? Okay, that's it. And the sexual one will be about how do I get that one person just to fall in love with my work, so that even if no one else likes it, if I can seduce one person with my work, if there can be a buzz between that thing, even if maybe they don't like it, but at least I've created a reaction. So that's going to create a very different, as you can imagine, approach to art. But now I digress.
No, but that's very interesting.
But the same is with eating.
Yeah, very interesting. So it really is at the foundation of so many different areas. And I think in many different careers, we can also use the Enneagram to understand ourselves and our intentions much better when we've got that information, right? Yeah. Okay, so what do you hope that this book will mean to people out there reading it? What was your main aim in writing this book?
I wanted to show a different approach to the whole huge field of dieting, eating, exercise, and doing so, use that as a tool to motivate people to understand themselves on a far deeper level. So that when it comes to approaching health, they're doing it with more insight.
Yeah, and I think it's very frustrating. I think many people experience a lot of frustration when they're trying to make better choices, when they're trying the latest diet or the next fad or whatever. So having that type of information can really help them to firstly understand their own tendencies and their own behaviors, and then actually start to make changes that can influence them and create health in the bigger scheme of things. So if someone is really interested in this topic, where can they find out more? So obviously they can find your book. Is it on Amazon? Where else can they find your book?
Yeah, the book in fact came out in 2017, I think. So it's been around a while. So it's available from Findhorn are the publishers in the UK, and Inner Traditions are the publishers in America. So obviously it's available from their site. I think you used to be able to get it from Take a Lot at Loot. Whether you still can, I don't know. And otherwise, yeah, you can download it as an ebook on Amazon, or it's available as a book from Amazon. The Enneagram of Eating.
Okay, and we'll put a link to the in the description if someone.
Right.
So I'll get that.
And so are the other books. Not all of them, because some of them are out of print now, but a lot of the other books are available there as well, particularly the Enneagram books.
Okay. And do you also work with individuals? So you're an Enneagram practitioner as well, right? So do you also coach individuals?
I used to, but there's a limit to how much time and hours there are in a day. So occasionally something comes up that I do step in, but it's not what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I do see people, but not as a regular thing.
Okay. All right.
It's like I'm contributing more, I think, by bringing the information to a greater spectrum of people than spending that time one-on-one with people. Although I enjoy it. When I do it, I love it, because I love what comes out of it. And the understandings and the realizations is wonderful. It's a privilege to be in that position.
But it seems like there's a lot of variation in your life. Lots of different topics, lots of different things.
I'm a 9. Nines like variation. So really. No, there is. And I'm not sure whether I suppose I earn the greater part of my income from art. But despite all the number of books, but it's a privilege as well to wake up in the morning and say, am I in a writing mode or am I in a painting mode? And to be able to follow your passion. I mean, not many people are privileged enough to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You have to work really hard. It's those books don't write themselves. But if you really enjoy what you're doing, then it's not, and it becomes almost effortless.
Oh, yes.
Although there's a lot of effort in it.
Yeah. And I truly believe that the world would be a better place if more people were able to do the things that they absolutely love, that they really care about, and that they're really passionate about. So I can imagine that it's very fulfilling and creates a lot of meaning in your life to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I think we're a lot healthier as a result.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. So thanks, Anne. It was a fantastic read. I really enjoyed reading the book, and it's quite enlightening, I would say, to know that there's a bit of a different angle to take here.
Hopefully physically as well. Sorry, enlightening.
Yes, all of it. No, everything comes together. The 3 centras. Anyway, so it really is. Yeah, it's very interesting angle to take when it comes to eating and the way that we approach our health. And I think it just shows us once again how important an individualized approach is when it comes to improving health, but also as coaches when we're supporting someone to make a shift in their health, to know that they're an individual and that they might need something completely different from what you need or what the client before them needs. So I think that's just very important to just be in contact with that information again. So thank you, Anne. It was an absolute privilege to have you on our show today, and yeah, all the best with your future endeavors.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Bye.